You know, it's interesting that the location-based applications have really burst onto kind of our awareness with things like the iPhone and products that bring that to our attention. And yet, the richness of stuff that carriers have to really understand what we're doing has been around for a while, and it's really leading us into this new world. A lot of the most interesting things have really happened culturally in the last couple of years on mobile platforms. This is, for example, on the iPhone, this is CitySense, which is one of the first applications that started asking, what are people doing in my location and what's buzzing right now? I started using some of these things recently, and it's very interesting to go from the search metaphor, you know, what does somebody like on Yelp by restaurant, to in real time, what are the buzzy places to go, or who are doing things right now? And this all kind of follows that theme of kind of where is the crowd going? There's a whole other kind of side of some of these things that get into civil engagement that I found interesting. At the recent TechCrunch 50 event, one of the top apps, in fact, was an e-government app, a very entrepreneurial app built by a couple of guys. And the idea was, how do you give participation back to people in a mobile way with the government? So this application, CitySourced, had as its notion, if you don't like graffiti or a pothole or something else in a city, what if you could geotag it and share it with the city right away? So in this case, you take a picture, you tag what it is, and you upload it. And one of the interesting things about this company is over the last couple of years, they've developed a database of 60,000 local government officials. So when the app comes out in about a month and there's, you know, tens of millions of iPhones, you'll have a big swag of the population who, if they don't like something, can reach their officials right away. And that's a very interesting way of kind of moving power and reaction from, you know, civic engagement used to be you saw a problem and it annoyed you, and the idea is how do you make it part of what goes on every day? And I asked Kurt, who was the founder, well, what was the reaction of cities when you first started working with them, when you wanted to integrate with their back ends? And here's what he told me about the first city he's working with.
First city we outreached to was San Jose, and they basically flipped out, and they said, you know, we're already doing things that are similar to this, but our big problem is we don't have a way to get the tickets into the system. And so our solution is a easy way for folks to micro-volunteer, and on the fly, you know, you can take a minute out of your time if you see, you know, a pothole or graffiti or a dead animal or whatever the case may be, and deal with the issue at the moment.
You know, what I liked about this is dealing with the city is often an annoying thing. It's like an exception. You have to go file a report. And the idea that you can deal with it the way that you send an SMS, and just as part of the ebb and flow of things, was interesting. I also asked them, well, now that we're going to have such a feedback loop with the city, do we know that they're actually going to fix the potholes any faster? Or else you get in the Comcast situation where you don't like service and you tweet about it, and there's still just as many Comcast people. And a lot of this is about integrating into the back end and helping cities prioritize things. This is a little bit of the interface that cities have that actually let you see what are the reports. You can go find clusters. So for example, in this space, they were able to realize that graffiti generally clustered around schools and when people were out of session. So like in the summers, kids tag stuff more and learning kind of things like that. But it's part of, this is really part of this participatory culture that social media really pushed, but is now becoming much more of a participatory culture of things. When I was a kid, my dad could not get me to turn out the lights. He would say all day long, turn out the lights. And it's only recently, kind of in gaming culture or Internet of Things culture, that we can do things like what Google's doing with their power project, where if we actually can instrument the electricity usage in our homes, we can turn turning out the lights into a game. It's also interesting how difficult it has been to bring this stuff along. You need utility companies. You need to figure out where you get the data. Is it a citywide thing? Can it be done individually? It was a lot of work to get at the point that now we can have kids compete as to who saves the most energy, which we know works because all of their dads have already become good at this. Anybody who has a Prius knows that the act of driving a Prius becomes a game, or this feedback loop where you try to save energy as you're driving. All of these, you know, it's interesting to see how people get pulled into a feedback loop, and almost with gaming culture, we do it with things that we participate in. One of the great media theorists was Marshall McLuhan, who always seemed to have insights about media that were very apt. He, of course, wrote 50 years ago, but he observed about the television medium something that's very true about all of these new emerging pieces, which is the more that you are engaged and have something to do, the better it is. Here he is talking 50 years ago about the TV quiz show scandals and the television medium, but it has a lot to do with, I think, engaging data today.
If the audience can become involved in the actual process of making the ad, then it's happy. It's like the old quiz shows. They were great TV because it gave the audience a role, something to do. They were horrified when they discovered they'd really been left out all the time because the shows are rigged. Now, this is a horrible misunderstanding of TV on the part of the programmers.
So this bit about giving us a role, something to do, seems to be at the core of this. McLuhan also, talking about augmented media, pointed out that for every augmentation, there's an amputation. When you give someone a car, you basically make them a quadriplegic inside of a machine, and the car's doing all of it. And when you create these location-aware applications, you end up kind of losing touch with location because you're staring at a screen all the time. One of the other interesting points he made is he coined the term global village. And he went on to point out that this did not mean some kumbaya thing where everyone is very happy. In fact, it had the elements of a village. And in villages, everyone knows everyone else's business. And that actually leads to a lot of group behavior. Here's a comment of his on that. And then I'll take a look at how that applies to some of the stuff that we are sensing and able to see today. Well, it's looking. If it can't find it, I will describe the clip to you. All right, let's see, it cannot. Well, how about we cancel the search and I'll describe the clip to you. So in this clip, Professor McLuhan points out that in a global village, we are all interested in everyone else's behavior hugely. It's kind of, he calls it an Ann Landers world writ large. In a tribe, everyone knows what everyone else is doing. And so there's almost this groupthink that goes on. And we can see that actually in social media today because, in fact, everyone is deeply aware of what's going on. One of the interesting examples of this was a study that was done in the New England Journal of Medicine that looked at smoking cessation patterns through networking theory and basically saw how people influencing one another pushed the use of smoking out of cities and towards the edge. Here's an animation of that.
This animation captures the years from 1971 to 2003, a period during which Americans quit smoking in large numbers, represented here by the number of gray dots declining over time. The animation also represents how smoking cessation may spread, given the influence that people appear to have on each other's behavior within a complex and evolving network of social relationships. During the 1990s, entire clusters of smokers within the network appear to quit in concert, and groups of adjoining nodes are seen to become white. Quantitative analyses demonstrate a tendency for smokers and non-smokers to form clusters within the network, and for smokers to move progressively to the periphery of the network, so that by the end of the study, the prevalence of smoking appears higher at the periphery of the network than at the center.